Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Parkinson's Resources webinar series. Welcome to 2018. So this is a great way to get our year started. I am Melissa Greer. I am the Education and Wellness Coordinator for Parkinson's Resources of Oregon. We are a nonprofit based in Portland, but we do have employees in Eugene and Central Oregon. So if you are viewing this webinar from any of those locations, it's good to know that we do have someone there available for you. A little bit about Parkinson's Resources. If you are not familiar, we do provide information and support and education services to people that are touched by Parkinson's disease. And this webinar series we've been doing for a couple years now, and we're excited to continue this through 2018. Currently, a lot of our webinars we have on our YouTube channel. And so we do record these, and you can view these. Again, we have a few others on our YouTube channel as well, and you can find that channel by just going to our website at parkinsonsresources.org. So before we get started, a little housekeeping, a few details. Feel free to submit your questions in the question box, which is on the right-hand side of the screen. You have a little box there, and there's an area for questions, so feel free to submit those questions throughout the webinar series today, and Scott will get to those towards the end of the webinar. And I know some of you submitted questions, and those have been sent to him as well, so we'll go through as many questions as possible. If you do have any technical issues, please feel free to submit questions on any, even if it's audio or technical, whatever it may be. Please make sure that you submit those in the question box as well. So today I'm actually fortunate because I'm joined by my colleague Heather Balducci, who's our social worker here at Parkinson's Resources. She does short-term counseling and case management with families and individuals with Parkinson's disease, and I'm going to hand it over to her today.
Great. Yeah, so thanks to everybody. So I'm going to introduce Scott today, who's going to do the bulk of our presentation, and then at the very end, after we get to questions for Scott, I'm going to just talk a little bit about, since this is just a huge transition for a lot of people and it's a major life change, just some of the things you want to think about. Just I'm going to cover that in a couple minutes at the very, very end of the presentation. So we'll get to Scott, and I'm going to talk a little bit about him. So Scott attended Marlborough College in Marlborough, Vermont, with a scholarship for the study of social justice. During his undergraduate career, he designed classes in creative writing for incarcerated people and taught inmates at a nearby correctional institution. Between college and law school, Scott worked as an English language teacher in Istanbul, Turkey, as a case manager for adults with mental health concerns in Vermont and Massachusetts, and as a benefits advocate for Central City Concern in Portland. While working as a benefits advocate, Scott exclusively represented homeless clients applying for Social Security benefits. Scott attended Willamette Law College in Salem, Oregon with a Law Merit Scholarship. During law school, Scott worked in the Social Security section of Thomas Kuhn, Newton, and Frost. He represented the state in community court proceedings as a clerk in the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office. And before returning to Thomas Kuhn, Newton, and Frost, Scott served as the senior clerk to the Honorable James C. Egan at the Oregon Court of Appeals. And Scott was with his wife and son in Southeast Portland. So thanks so much, Scott, for coming out, and we'll get to you.
Hey. All right, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that you guys can see my slides at this point. Is that working? Okay, great. All right, so we'll get started here. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to everyone on this webinar. I'm gonna click us over so we can just see the slides, and we'll walk through them. So, as Heather mentioned, I'm an attorney at Thomas Kuhn, Newton, and Frost. There, I practice solely in disability law, which means that my practice focuses on helping disabled people get Social Security disability benefits from the Social Security Administration and from private long-term disability insurance providers. As Heather mentioned, I was a social worker before I was a lawyer, and the thing that drew me to this practice area is that as a disability lawyer, I only get to do good work. My only task is to help sick and injured people get some financial stability. So here's our agenda today. We're primarily going to be talking about Social Security disability claims. And in the process of doing that, we're going to be talking about the application process, the analysis, and by that I mean, what is Social Security thinking when they're deciding whether or not a claimant is disabled or not disabled. I'm going to give you some tips for applying for benefits. And then at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about long-term disability claims and how those are different from Social Security disability claims. Decided to focus primarily on Social Security disability claims because most people are eligible for Social Security disability claims. There is a small set of people who are not, and we'll get to that group in the course of this presentation. But by and large, you qualify for those benefits by being a U.S. citizen or refugee and being disabled. Long-term disability claims are somewhat different. You don't qualify for those benefits unless you have a private long-term disability insurance policy. Most people don't go out and buy one of those. The way most people are covered by those policies is through an employer. Many employers offer that as a benefit to their employees, and that's how most people can access those benefits. So let's start talking about the Social Security disability application process. I know a lot of people are concerned about when is the right time to apply, and there's some bright line rules to think about in terms of that, and then there's some more softer things to think about. So let's start with the bright line rules. When you're unable to earn more than $1,180 a month by working, there's a bright line rule that says if you earn over that amount of money, you are not disabled under the Social Security rules. Sometimes people think you have to be not working at all in order to qualify for Social Security disability insurance. That is incorrect. You have to earn under this threshold income. That being said, working a little bit, sometimes Social Security Administration takes that as evidence that you could work a little bit more. And so bright line rule, under this income threshold, softer rule, the less you earn, the better for the Social Security analysis. You also have to have what Social Security considers a severe impairment. Severe impairment in Social Security's eyes is a condition that more than minimally impairs your ability to work and will last 12 months or is expected to end in death. For that requirement, often in the early phases of a Social Security claim, you will receive a denial that your condition hasn't lasted long enough. This is more applicable to someone with an acute injury or someone whose condition has recently onset and Social Security Administration is not willing to speculate that it will last a year. The last one is a softer rule. This is when both you and your doctor agree that it's time for you to stop working. And the reason that it's important, it's not essential, but the reason that it's important that your doctor agree is because your doctor's chart notes are going to be the primary piece of evidence in your Social Security claim. Okay, let's talk about the Social Security application process itself. For most people, there are 3 steps in the Social Security application process. An initial application, a reconsideration application, and a hearing before a judge. So I say that for most people, this is what the path looks like. It's not true that everyone will go through all of these stages. In fact, you can be successful at any one of these stages. So a person might apply and be successful in their initial application. A person might then be successful in reconsideration, and a person might be successful at the hearing phase. The way this process is set up, you'll look at the timelines there, takes an extremely long time. And the way this process is set up, it's more difficult to be successful at the early stages, and it's easier to be successful at the latter stages. So what's going on here? The Social Security Administration is putting people through a ringer, and this 2-year wait, when you add all these together, you get a little more than 2 years. For most people, this 2-year wait eliminates a lot of claims that they might have to pay otherwise if they were more timely about deciding these cases. That's because people get discouraged after initial application. They think, well, the Social Security Administration has decided I'm not disabled. I guess I need to figure something else out. So some people just walk away from a good claim. Also, some people disappear. As Heather mentioned, I worked back in my social worker days, was doing Social Security disability claims for homeless people. Well, people with unstable housing are sometimes not able to stay in the same place long enough to follow through with the Social Security application. Okay, some people disappear and some people die. And this process is set up to eliminate people. It's also set up, there's some people who maybe working's really hard, but maybe they can work a little bit, and they can't go 2 years without a paycheck, so they find a way to work a little bit. So this is the process we have. I encourage people with righteous claims to not get discouraged and to follow through with the claim all the way to the end. So let's talk about how the Social Security Administration analyzes claims. So we're going to use an example here to kind of walk through what the Social Security Administration thinks when it looks at a claim. So let's take an imaginary person. This is Pam. She's 58 years old. She's recently diagnosed with Parkinson's. She's a bookkeeper, and functionally, she's experiencing cognitive issues, fatigue, and tremor. So the first step in the analysis, well, let me take a step back. The Social Security Administration regulations require the Social Security Administration to go through 5 steps in the analysis. So we're going to walk through those. The first step is that income threshold that we talked about. So you have to be earning under $1,180. And this is the 2018 number. It goes up a little bit every year. That term is called substantial gainful activity. So in our example, Pam, she stopped working in January 2017. So she easily passes the first step in the analysis. She has no income. Just as a side note here, sometimes people are in a situation where they've stopped working, but they do receive money from passive income. So let's say you owned a rental property and you've stopped working, but you're getting income from your rental property. And then the question is, well, my income from my rental property is more than $1,180 a month. Am I going to be found not disabled because of that income? And the answer to that is Social Security is concerned with work for pay or profit. So they will look at what you're doing with that rental property, and they're saying, is what you're doing with that rental property work that you're doing that is earning the money, or is it simply passive? If it's simply passive, they don't count it against you. If they decide that you're doing all sorts of things, you're fixing the lights and painting the house and managing the property, they're going to look at some of that as income and count it against you. Okay, second step in the analysis, severe impairment. So the term severe makes it sound quite challenging. In fact, this is a pretty minimal requirement, other than the duration element that it has to last for 12 months or be expected to last for 12 months or end in death. A severe impairment just means it more than minimally impacts your ability to work. Another aspect of this part of the analysis is who it's diagnosed by. So Social Security has a list of acceptable medical sources. Acceptable medical sources are the only people in Social Security's eyes who can diagnose a condition. And those include MDs, DOs, psychologists, and PsyDs. So in our example here, Pam is diagnosed by a naturopathic doctor. Social Security still does not consider those acceptable sources. This is a challenge in Pam's claim. Social Security Administration, as of last year, recently expanded the list of who it considers to be an acceptable source. So now they're including nurse practitioners and psychiatric mental health nurse practitioners as well, and family nurses. So it's slightly expanded, but still naturopaths are not falling into this category. So that's something to consider. If your primary or only treatment is through a naturopath, it could cause a problem for a Social Security claim. So the third step in the analysis is the question of whether the person meets or equals a listing. So a listing is, the Social Security Administration maintains a list of various conditions and symptoms from those conditions. And if you are found to meet or equal one of these listings, you're deemed disabled. So these listings are very high thresholds. These are for people who are in the end stages of diseases. So for Parkinson's, I didn't pull out the entire listing, but This is one element of the listing, just as an example of what it looks like. In Pam's case, she's not at this point, and so we would move on to the next stage of the analysis. And this is the fourth step, the fourth of 5 steps. The question is, can you return to your past work? So can you do the easiest job you've ever done? In our example here, Pam cannot return to her past work. It's too cognitively challenging. As we said, she was a bookkeeper, and given the stage that her condition is at, she's not able to do it. Social Security Administration agrees. Okay, final step in the analysis. Can you do an easier job? So the question here is, do your skills transfer to an easier job? And for most people, the reason that they're found not able to return to an easier job is that they're going to miss too much work, or they're not going to be able to stay on task if they are able to go to work. And that's the situation with Pam. The Social Security Administration agrees that because of her condition, she's just going to miss too much work. So as another bright line rule, the Social Security Administration considers missing too much work. How much is that? 2 or more days of work per month on average. If a person misses that much work, the Social Security Administration will concede that they're unable to work competitively. Okay, so this is a slightly more complicated element of the Social Security disability world, and it's where a lot of people get confused. So we've just walked through the analysis, and now we're going to talk about the 2 different types of disability payments. There are 2 programs that are run by the Social Security Administration that are commonly called Social Security Disability. These 2 programs have different rules and different ways to qualify for them. The first program I'm going to talk about is the one on the left here, called Social Security Disability Insurance. SSD or SSDI is how it's sometimes referred to. So this is based on the taxes that you pay. So every time you're paying your Social Security taxes, you're not just paying into your retirement account, but you're also purchasing insurance from the federal government. You're purchasing disability insurance. The maximum payout is close to $3,000 a month, but in order to reach that max, you have to be an extremely high earner. A good number that I see for a lot of people who have worked hard and made good money most of their life, $2,400, $2,500 a month. You have to have worked recently to earn these work credits. So this figure is based on how many work credits you have. Every quarter that you work and you earn a certain amount of money, you earn a work credit. For most people, that means you have to have worked within the last 5 years. It doesn't matter how much money you have. You can be a billionaire and qualify for Social Security Disability Insurance. You are only paid 1 year back in time from your application date for Social Security Disability Insurance. And there's a 5-month waiting period if you're found disabled. So what does that mean in practice? So let's say that I apply for Social Security Disability Insurance today. It's the 12th of January, 2018. And I allege that I became disabled 1 year ago, January 12th, 2017. The Social Security Administration agrees. They're going to pay me back in time 1 year, but they don't pay you for the first 5 months that you're disabled. So I would only receive 7 months of disability benefits retroactively. Okay. Let's see, did I put that on the slide? Yes. So you're also qualified for Medicare if you receive Social Security Disability Insurance. Now, Medicare doesn't kick in right away. It only kicks in 24 months after your first qualifying payment. This is a big piece for a lot of people because they're in a situation where they need continuing health care. Well, there's a big donut hole for a lot of folks that there's going to be these 24 months plus the 5-month waiting period, 29 months, in which they're not receiving insurance through Medicare. So it's something to plan for. All right. So what's the difference between Social Security Disability Insurance and Supplemental Security Income? Supplemental Security Income is a program for people who haven't worked recently but are also disabled. Now, in order to qualify for this program, you have to be low income and low asset. You have to have essentially no income. And the more income you have, the more your benefits will be offset. If you have income up to a certain point, you won't receive any benefits. You also have to be low asset. So that, oh, there's the dollar figure. If you earn that much, you don't receive any benefits, $733 a month. So there's no requirement for you recently to work, but there's an asset limit, and the asset limit is $2,000 for an individual. They don't count certain items. The Social Security Administration doesn't count your home and one car. So the value of your home and the value of one car, not counted against you. They don't count also your household items. You know, if you have, they don't go and say, well, do you have a frying pan? How much is your frying pan worth? None of that. You have a TV, what's that worth? None of that. But they do count things like retirement accounts. They do count things like that you wouldn't expect, like if you own a burial plot, they'll count that as an asset. So a lot of people aren't going to qualify for supplemental security income based on assets until they reach a point where they have very limited assets. And in this program, there's no retroactivity in terms of your application back payment. So what that means in a nutshell is if I apply today, even if I allege that I was disabled a year ago and the Social Security Administration agrees I was disabled a year ago, they're only going to pay me back till today. And you get Medicaid immediately when you receive supplemental security income. This used to be a much bigger deal before the Affordable Care Act. Now most people who are in a situation where they qualify for SSI already qualify for the Oregon Health Plan or the state equivalent Medicaid program in whatever state they live. Okay, so here's Pam. Congratulations. Pam went all the way to a hearing and the judge agreed. She receives her retroactive benefits going back 1 year before her application date, less the 5-month waiting period. She was successful at the hearing because her doctor drafted a statement that was used at the hearing. The judge agreed that with the doctor about her limitations, so her benefits are paid back, and there's a monthly benefit. That's a number you'd see for someone who had worked making reasonable income for a good number of years. Okay, so tips for applying. Appeal denials. Like I talked about at the very beginning of our presentation when we talked about the 3 stages in a Social Security application, to some degree, the process is set up to benefit the people who stick with it. So you got to appeal your denial. You have 60 days to do it. You got to keep seeing your doctor. And the reason for this is your medical record is the primary evidence in a Social Security claim. So when you're seeing your doctor, it's also important that that you're honest with your doctor and that you tell your doctor everything that's going on with you. It's hard for a lot of people to go through a laundry list of all the things that are bothering you and all the things that are getting in the way of you leading the life that you used to lead. But it's important that you do it. If you don't do it, it doesn't wind up in your chart notes. And if it doesn't wind up in your chart notes, Social Security Administration is not going to believe your allegations. So you got to report all your symptoms. It's also important to have a good relationship with your doctor because down the road, if you are in a situation where you're going before a hearing before a judge, one of the best pieces of evidence you can have is a written statement from your doctor. I put on here, avoid discussing disability. This is a little bit more of not a bright line rule. So it's good to have a relationship with your doctor, and if you're in a situation where you feel comfortable talking about your disability application with your doctor, that's good. But sometimes doctors are taking their notes quickly and may write in there, Charlie came in and talked to me about disability, period. And that's a reminder to the doctor that Charlie's in this disability application process. But the Social Security Administration can look at that and say, oh, sounds like Charlie's trying to game the system. A couple different ways to read that same chart note. So the safest way is don't talk about it. Take your doctor's advice. Take your medications as prescribed. Undergo the recommended evaluations. The Social Security Administration can draw adverse inferences against you if you don't do what the doctor advises, so long as you don't have a good reason. So good reasons include, I don't want to take a surgery. I don't want to undergo that surgery because it's risky. That's fine. But if you don't have a good reason, the Social Security Administration will conclude that maybe you're not seeking out the most aggressive treatment that could cure your condition, and they may deny you for that reason. Look at your social media presence. So the Social Security Administration will look at your Facebook page. They'll look at Twitter and blog posts, and if there's, we tend to put our best face on social media. We like, you want your high school classmates to see, cute pictures of your baby and you out having a good time and all that sort of thing. But the Social Security Administration will look at that. They might say, well, it looks like he's doing all right. Reduce drugs and alcohol. If you drink to excess or you use illegal drugs, Social Security Administration can use that against you. So reduce any sort of use. Marijuana is a little more complicated, given that it's used to treat a lot of conditions, and we're in a state where marijuana is legal under state law. So Social Security Administration is a federal program, and they have a harsher view of marijuana use than the state government. So how does that play out in practice, though? In practice, it means if you're using marijuana under the advice of a doctor, in this day and age, it's not the biggest strike against you. But keep in mind that it could be used against you. So again, follow your medical provider's advice. Okay, last thing, find a competent lawyer. And how do you do that? That's a question I get a lot too. But let's step back and let's think about when do you want to get a lawyer? So if you think back to that slide where I talked about the 3 stages in the process, you can get a lawyer at any stage in that process. And I do represent people at any stage in that process, and a lot of lawyers do. But what a lawyer can do for you early in the process, for many people, regardless of having a lawyer early in the process, they're going to have challenges, and they might still go through the stages, all 3 stages to get to a hearing. Long and short of it, when you're looking for a lawyer, don't do late night TV, don't do bus ads. The firms that do that sort of stuff allocate their resources more towards advertising than towards helping clients. Best way to do it is word of mouth. If you know someone who's received Social Security Disability, reach out to them. If you are looking on the internet, look at reviews. These days, law firms are all reviewed by Google reviews, by Yelp. There's a website that's specifically for lawyer reviews called AVVO. You can go on that and you can see what the person's clients think about them. If their clients are positive, it's a good sign that that person is doing good work. If their clients are negative, take a grain of salt. Work with local, not national attorneys. So there's a lot of these large national firms that do Social Security work. The problem with those is that a single lawyer will work in all sorts of different hearing offices. So in Oregon, there's 5 or 6 hearing offices. So which means there's a set of judges at each hearing office. Here in Portland, there's about 13 judges. An attorney, if you're doing a hearing in Portland, an attorney who works exclusively in Portland sees those judges all the time and has a relationship with those judges and understands what sort of evidence each judge likes and what sort of evidence each judge doesn't like. And if you're working with a national firm, they don't have that insider knowledge, and it makes it a lot harder. They don't know how to prepare a case for a particular judge. They can't. Okay, so that's a quick overview of Social Security, and I want to leave some time for questions, but I'm going to quickly talk about long-term disability. So long-term disability, how is it different? The policy sets the rules subject to federal law. So every long-term disability policy is different. It's a contract between you and an insurance provider. And the policy, that's the contract. That tells you what you get and what you don't get. That being said, all long-term disability policies are governed by federal law. They can't go outside of what the federal law says they can do. And that federal law is called ERISA. Okay, that being said, there are general similarities between long-term disability policies. The first one that you're going to see in nearly every long-term disability policy is that you are only disabled under the policy. Well, sorry, let's start over. You will be found disabled during the first 2 years after you stop working if you're unable to perform your own occupation. That's the job you were doing at the time that you became disabled. Afterward, so year 3, you must be able to perform any occupation to be found disabled. So let's say you're an attorney and you have a brain injury. Well, that brain injury would likely prevent you from performing your work as an attorney and you have a long-term disability policy, you're going to be likely found disabled for 2 years. Year 3, they're going to send you a letter that says, well, we think you could be a waiter. We think you could be a bus driver. Who knows? And if that's true, you're not going to be insured under that. You're not going to be covered under that policy, and your insurance benefits are going to end. So the benefits that you earn are not a set figure. It's based on what your pre-disability earnings were. Under most policies, it's 60%. Some policies, it's 80%. And nearly always these end when you reach full retirement age, the benefits end. So we reached the point where we can take some questions. It looks like we've got maybe, I think, 15 minutes or so. I don't know if there's any questions. Okay, I see a question here. Okay, I'm going to go back to the camera. Sorry. All right, okay. So I have a question here. If you own property and do not personally perform the maintenance on the property, is the rent still considered income? So in that situation, likely no. So that's the passive income situation. Now you want to keep in mind that this goes back to that question of, are you earning substantial gainful activity? Are you earning over $1,180 a month? So for this person, the answer is likely no. Let's see if we have any more questions. Just waiting for them to come in on the chat.
Disability in addition. Yeah, we'll have one more question in just a second, everyone.
Oh, sure. And I'm trying to recall a question I received earlier. Okay, gotcha. So here's the question. Are these benefits only available because Pam is the age that she is? Are people receiving regular Social Security eligible for Social Security disability in addition to that? That's a very good question. Okay, so it is easier to get Social Security disability benefits under the rules laid out by the Social Security Administration the older you get. Here's how that works in the rules. You want to think about the age 55 as a magic age. People younger than the age of 55, the question that Social Security has to answer in order to determine whether or not they're disabled is, can they do any job that exists in significant numbers in the national economy? So that means jobs that are relatively simple. If you're able to work assembly line or something like that, the Social Security Administration, and you're under the age of 55, the Social Security Administration is going to say you can do a job that exists in significant numbers. Over the age of 55, the analysis changes radically. When someone is 55, the question becomes, are you able to perform your past relevant work? And the past relevant work means the work you did in the last 15 years. So that substantially narrows the scope of jobs that the Social Security Administration can look at. Let's say you've only been a bookkeeper in the last 15 years. The question is, do your conditions prevent you from being a bookkeeper? There's an additional limitation. You also have to have some physical limitations. It's a little complicated, but in a nutshell, are you able to do your past work? So in Pam's situation, it was a little bit easier for her to be found disabled because she was over 55 and she had a prior job that was somewhat more complicated. She was a bookkeeper. But there's a second part to this question, and that's, are people who are receiving regular Social Security eligible for Social Security disability benefits in addition to that? So I think by regular Social Security, the question means retirement benefits. So retirement benefits kick in at different phases depending on when you take the benefits. So early retirement, for people who are reaching early retirement age right now, it's 62 and a half. If you take early retirement benefits, you receive only 75% of your full retirement benefits. So let's use round numbers. Let's say you had $2,000 as your full retirement benefit. You're 62 and a half, you decide to take early retirement. You receive 75% of that, $1,500. And you receive that every month for the rest of your life. Now, if you were someone who became disabled, and Social Security Administration agreed that you were disabled, you would receive that difference from Social Security disability. so you receive that $500. Until you reach full retirement age. At the point at which you reach full retirement age, your benefits would entirely convert to retirement benefits. You wouldn't receive any disability benefits, but the amount wouldn't change. It would be your full retirement amount. A question that people often have related to that is, how much are my benefits? So when you become disabled, the benefits that you receive under the Social Security Disability Insurance, the program, talking about the two programs, that's the program for people who have been paying their Social Security taxes and working. The disability benefit amount is equal to your full retirement amount, were you at full retirement age right now. So what that means is sometimes you'll get, from Social Security Administration, you'll get a letter in the mail, happens about every 5 years, that says, hey, this is what your benefits are. This is, if you reach full retirement age, this is what you get. It would be that amount. Another way to find out what that amount is for you as you're starting the planning process is to start an account with the Social Security Administration. So the Social Security Administration has this online portal now that is that it's called My Social Security. You can create an account there, and it tells you what your benefits are and how much you paid in the Social Security Administration and all that sort of stuff. So if you go and create an account, you can look for a number that's referred to as your PIA, your personally insured amount, and that's your benefit if you become disabled, that number. Right. See if there's any other questions. Okay, we have another question. So how can someone on regular Social Security, not disability, get retrained to make some monthly income? Okay, so regular Social Security, I think, again, is talking about retirement. And I'm not aware of any programs for someone who is retired but not disabled to get retraining, other than this is unrelated to Social Security, but every state has something called the Office of Vocational Rehabilitative Services, so VOC Rehab for short. And this is a program run by the state that trains people to work if they want to work. It's a good program, and anyone can access that. You don't have to be disabled. But to maybe expand on this question in a way that might be helpful to others is, let's say you're getting disability and you want to go back to work. What do you do in that situation? Well, Social Security Administration gives grants to various nonprofits to help people go back to work. They want people to go back to work. So here in Oregon, there's an organization called Disability Rights Oregon, and they have an attorney whose only job it is to help people navigate the very complicated rules about going back to work while they're receiving Social Security Disability Insurance benefits, and to do it in a way that protects their benefits while also getting them back to work. And if you know someone in that situation, I suggest reaching out to Disability Rights Oregon. Let's see if we have more questions.
Yeah, so we actually have a ton of questions. So, and I'm just going to kind of read this one off.
Sure.
This one says, I will be applying for disability on January 23rd. My last day of work will be the 22nd. If I'm found eligible for benefits after 6 months, given the 5-month waiting period, I would receive a check for 1 month, right?
Yep, that's exactly how that works. Yep. But you would also receive your benefits going forward into the future. It's just a question of how big your back benefits are.
And we've got another one too. This one is, my husband was just diagnosed with PD, and he gets a small amount, $267 for SSI, and I get $877, and we're barely making it. Is there any way to get more money? So I guess in a situation where there's a couple, one person's earning just a tiny bit of SSI, and then there's also another income. What do you advise people?
Well, that one strikes me as a little unusual. I think I'd want to ask that person some follow-up questions about their income, and that person could feel free to give me a call, because it's there's a lot of factors about why the husband's Social Security might be smaller, but it does seem a little unusual to me.
Okay. And then does alimony fit into reported income?
Yes.
Okay.
And would alimony potentially make somebody ineligible for Social Security disability, or just the SSI piece? Do you see what I mean?
Right. Okay, I understand. So we're talking about would alimony payments. Okay. So I'm sorry. Let me take a step back. I don't think I understood your question. So Social Security Administration is concerned about work you're doing for pay or profit. So if you're receiving alimony payments and those are just payments from a divorce settlement, those aren't going to be counted as earned income. Social Security is concerned about what you're earning, what you're working to what you're, sorry, pay or profit. So if you're working for that money, they're concerned about it. If you're receiving it for another reason, they are not.
Okay, let's see.
Let me add a little bit to that question. So it gets a little more complicated, and this is what I was initially responding to. It gets a little more complicated in terms of if it's a SSI claim. So if you're well, I would encourage that person to reach out to an expert if it gets into a situation where they're concerned that they're not receiving what they should be receiving, because it's a little bit complicated.
Okay. Okay, I was a stay-at-home mother and have little Social Security buildup. I'm divorced after 34 years of marriage. Will disability be based on former husbands?
In some situations, yes. And just based on those facts, it seems likely that you'd be able to tap into your former spouse's disability benefits. So that's the requirements for that are 10 years of marriage, and there's some age requirements, and there's some question about when you're remarried, how that affects your case. But yes, so for many people, you can tap into a spouse's earnings, which only seems fair considering you're raising the kids.
How about this? So what if a person is already retired and receiving Social Security retirement benefits? Are there any benefits that it would be wise for a person to apply for?
So if they're receiving their full retirement amount, receiving Social Security disability benefits isn't gonna increase your income. But if you're in a situation where, well, I guess in that case you're retired as well, so you wouldn't have a long-term disability policy. There's nothing off the top of my head that occurs to me that would benefit that person.
Okay. So also, how do they prove? How do they prove competency with Alzheimer's and dementia? If it's one of those things that's it's kind of so quote unquote invisible.
I got you. So I think what this question is trying to get at is how does the Social Security Administration decide that someone who has trouble thinking can't work? So the question typically for an individual like that comes down to your ability to stay on task and concentrate at work. And Social Security Administration is going to look at primarily mental health treatment records, if there are any. They're going to look at objective tests of cognitive functioning. So a simple test that even your primary care provider can administer is called the SLUMS test. It's the St. Louis University Mental Status Examination, and it's a simple 25 question, I think it's 25 questions, test that your primary care doctor should be able to give you, and that comes back with a raw score that indicates some degree of impairment. A better test is performed by a neuropsychologist, and it's called a neuropsychological evaluation. A lot of providers will refer you to that if you're in a situation where you're having trouble thinking, and that produces the best evidence.
So it looks like we have some specific questions, and we're going to encourage you, and some of them are just a follow-up from some questions that you've already submitted. So we're going to encourage you to maybe reach out to Scott with some of those specific questions, and see if it's maybe something that can be elaborated on privately. So from there, thank you so much, Scott. What we're going to do is go ahead and we are going to switch presenters, and Heather Balducci will be going over some information on managing the transition if you are going back, if you're going to be stop working.
So thanks, everybody. Yeah, so thank you so much, Scott. Hopefully we got some good questions in there, got some good questions answered by Scott, and just a lot of really helpful information, and also a reminder that we will have this up on our YouTube channel if you want to review it later, or somebody wasn't able to actually be here live. So I just want to affirm to everybody that this is a huge transition. If you're thinking about stepping away from work, or you already have, it's a big change that you really want to approach with a lot of mindfulness about what you want to do and what you want to make different. So even if you are working and having a really challenging time working, and it's stressful and taking a lot out of your life, there's probably a lot that it's putting into your life. It's probably positive for a lot of different reasons. So you want to make sure that you're replacing all of those positives with just everything that that work brought into your life, that you're putting something back into. So so you start by just taking an inventory about what was helpful about your work to you. So was it a social outlet? Was it intellectually stimulating for you? Were you learning something new every day and being challenged cognitively? Were you getting up and moving, and was it providing you physical activity? Even people with desk jobs, you kind of are amazed at how much just work physical activity you put in just running around the office. It also provides structure. So just from day to day, there's a time you get up, there's a time that meetings, there's kind of a rhythm to your day when you're working. And then also meaning. For a lot of us, work is a really meaningful part of who we are. So stopping work can be really jarring. So with a social outlet, you want to make sure that you're staying connected with colleagues if possible. I know a lot of folks with Parkinson's who have stopped work and they still go out to happy hour with their colleagues from time to time, or just stay connected by email. And then also try forming new relationships and put yourself in situations where you might make new friends. So if this means taking up a volunteer job, going out to Parkinson's support groups, or just other community centers, places that you're going to just be around people. And then also just remember that being social doesn't mean that you're constantly interacting. Our former social worker, Tony, used to remind people that even if you're around people, that's a social interaction. So if you normally have your second cup of coffee at home, you might want to go to your local coffee shop and go sit and read a book and have your second cup of coffee at the coffee shop instead. So, and that can be a good social outlet that can kind of help you manage that transition out of work. Also, just remember to keep up intellectual stimulation. So if you're taking a class or learning something new, that can really keep up that part of your mind and keep you active. Just think about what is stimulating to your mind and your intellect. So give yourself the time and space to continue doing that even after you're working. And then just a plug, as always, as we do in pretty much all of our presentations about physical activity. So a lot of people who are working full-time, they aren't able to get in as much Parkinson's-focused exercise as they would otherwise. So this is a good time to think about what would your doctor have you doing in terms of exercise. What would you like to do in terms of exercise, and actually get that routine going now that you have the time for it. And we have a listing of exercise classes. Even if you're outside of some of the pro exercise classes, geographically, you can find out more other exercise classes through us, or just kind of get a start on where you might go. And then remember that exercise, if you're doing group exercise, you're kind of killing two birds with one stone. It's social and it's physical, so you're doubling your benefits. And if you have fatigue, you're doing two things at one time, which is really helpful if that's one of your symptoms. So also, work creates structure for us. So when you're stopping work, you want to make sure that you're starting a new routine so that your time is actually scheduled out. Even if it's just things that you're doing around the house, that you're doing a certain amount of cleaning around the house, or having your coffee break, just schedule those out. And we know that Parkinson's is really unpredictable, so if you don't know, we always want to maintain a lot of flexibility with that. But if you can keep just a basic routine, that can be really helpful in just avoiding a lot of the depression and kind of the rut that people get into. And then also just think about ways that you can continue with the meaning in your life that work brought in. So a lot of people continue to volunteer. You probably don't want to be volunteering too much because, like Scott was saying, there's things that can count against you in the disability application process. But if you're just volunteering a small amount of time here and there with an organization, that's not going to make a big difference. And a lot of times, if you have a faith community or something else that really brings me into your life, just reconnect with that community. It's a good time to do it when you're stopping work. And then it's also a good time to get in contact with a trained therapist, like a psychologist, a counselor, social worker, just so this person can assist you through this whole transition. And just planning for it and dealing with some of the emotional aspects that come along with it. So if you haven't already done that, just consider it. Part of what we do here at PRO is we do offer free short-term counseling. So if you're here, our office is in Beaverton, and if that's something you could ever make it out to, that's something I do with folks all the time, is just talk them through the transition away from work in a series of counseling sessions. So there's one. And then also, these are just some other good resources. Volunteer Match is a great website where you can find volunteer opportunities. The Aging and Disability Resource Connection, there's one that covers all of Oregon, and then another that covers Southwest Washington. And you can call those places up and just say, hey, I'm newly stopping work. I'm looking for resources and ideas for things that will keep me active and busy and engaged in the community. So those are great places to call. And then give us a call too for information on support groups, exercise classes, other social programs. We've got a lot of those type of things going. So just let us know and keep updated on what's going on with PRO. And then over on the left in the blue is the Psychology Today website. So this is a great resource for if you're looking for a local private practice therapist or counselor. You can look the person up by location, and you can also enter your insurance and find a therapist who will take your insurance. So it's a really easy way to find a good therapist that's going to be a good match for you through their website, or you can contact us for that as well. We help people connect with therapists all the time. So I think that's it from my section. And let's see, if you have questions after this webinar, like we said, there were some really specific questions that might be best routed to Scott. And then also some resource questions. If you are looking at PRO resources or other resources, feel free to contact me or Melissa at our helpline. There's our emails are both listed there. And I think that is it. And Scott's phone number again is 503-228-5222. That is his office number there at Thomas Kuhn, Newton, and Frost. So
lovely. If you do have any questions for Heather, like she said, go ahead and give us a call. Her email is on the bottom as well, and you can call and schedule a session with Heather if you feel that that's something that you would benefit from. So that is it for today. Just want to thank Scott and Heather so much for being presenters on this webinar, and thank you to everyone who attended as well. Again, a video recording of this webinar will be available on PRO's YouTube channel within the week. So if there's someone that missed it, you can go ahead and refer them to parkinsonsresources.org, which is our website, and there is a link to get to our YouTube channel. This concludes our webinar broadcast today. Please keep an eye out for our next webinar, which will be in the spring, and everyone have a lovely day. Thank you.